So when it comes to planning and operations, there are a couple quotes that come straight out of the first page that I think help to inform kind of our overall philosophy toward this. So I'll just start by sharing a couple quotes and then we'll dive into the actual specifics, look at some of the case studies that support some of the key insights and takeaways from this chapter 6. So the quotes, just to start us off, the opening quote of the chapter says, if you think of your school as a human body, planning and operations is the skeleton that holds together and organizes the meat and muscle of instructional practices and school culture. Great quote to set up the philosophy, right? The skeleton is a support system, but it allows the muscles to do what they do and to take action and to create movement and kind of have a tangible, like a see, an effect that you can see. Um, Two more quotes quickly to kind of get us into this. So it says that these systems, from bell schedules to budgets, structure how learning time is managed and how funding and school facilities are organized to best support student achievement. I choose to share that quote because it gets us focused on the purpose of the planning and operations, which is supporting student achievement. Um, and there's a wide range. It sets up the idea that we're going from bell schedules to budgets and kind of everywhere in between. So this is a wide ranging topic. And the last quote I'll share real quick is just that when implemented effectively, these structures give staff members the right tools, processes, and resources to move towards school-wide goals and to determine if and how to adjust strategies to meet those goals. Right? So we have tools, we have processes in place, we know our resources, and we know how we can reach the goals that we set. Um, Without good organization, you can have the best teaching going on, you can have excellent instructional practice, and some of that is just going to fall to pieces if you do not support that with the correct structure. When it comes to different categories of planning and operations, the chapter kind of broke down four categories for us. And so before I get into what those categories are and kind of what the insights and takeaways are for each category, each one of these categories gives you the option to do three things, and these are important things. So it allows you to focus your resources. It allows you to kind of align your system so that there's no confusion and chaos, and then it allows you to remove barriers that may be getting in the way of achieving your goals or student achievement. So to get into the four levers or the four categories, these are them. You've got goal setting and action planning. You have time management, you have your budget, and then you have your relationship with stakeholders, families, the district, central office. And so we'll look at each one of these um, in depth. So we'll start with the first one, goal setting and action planning. Um, for each lever or category, I'll talk about kind of like what it's about. I'll support with maybe like a key take or a key quote from the chapter, and then if there's any applicable case studies, I'll talk about those. So for goal setting and action planning, um, it's about setting a direction, right? It's about setting a plan for how to achieve a goal, not just setting a goal, but setting the steps to get to that goal. Kind of like we would do with backwards design and instruction, right? We set goals and then we look backwards at how do we start and what do we do along the way to get there. The key takeaway for this is probably that just these goals drive so much of what you're doing at your school. Your goals as a school impact things such as your scheduling, budgeting, which is another category here, your staffing, some of your instructional decisions, some of your interventions, just so many things that this has an impact on. A key quote to support from the chapter says that principals have greatest success when they diagnose the state of their schools, they identify priorities and strategies to address areas in need of improvement. They develop an action plan and they monitor and adjust plans as needed. And so that's important, right, to have flexibility in this and to be monitoring and adjusting as we go. There are some actions that principals can take, and so some of these key actions, probably three main ones. Um, Diagnosing what your school needs by specifically looking at data. There's a reason we had a whole section of so many courses dedicated to looking at data and interpreting data and kind of diagnosing what it means and what we need and what we need to be focusing on. Another action that principals or school leaders can take in this category is just setting focused goals, not having something that's too broad, something that is focused enough to be manageable and doable and controllable in some ways. And then lastly, having specific milestones, right? So not just assessing at the end of the year, did we meet our goal, but like kind of checking throughout so that we can go back and do what I said earlier, monitor and adjust as needed. Moving on to the second category of planning and operations, you have time management, which is absolutely important. And when we think time management, it's not just like what's the actual time of our day look like, what's the bell schedule and things like that. It's how we use and maximize that time to do a couple of things. We need to have teachers who have time to like plan effectively. We need to have time so that students can learn and we're not outpacing them or not giving them going too quickly, going too slow. And then lastly, we need to make sure that time is organized effectively so that your school leaders actually have time to lead and think and not just be like problem solving or working, um, kind of getting off topic all the time. Key insight for this, to summarize just down to a single idea, um, time is a valuable resource, right? We only have so many days in the year. We only have so many hours in the days at school, and it goes very quickly. And there are so many things that we need to cover. And so it's a valuable resource, and considering your time management and how it's spent and how it can help you effectively do those three things I just mentioned is very important. Two quotes to support really quickly. The first quote, the key is not to prioritize what's on your schedule, but to schedule your priorities. And then the second quote, picking up 5 minutes, just 5 minutes added to class per day. So picking up 5 minutes adds up to 90 hours of additional instructional time over the course of the school year. So time management, right, it forces us to focus on numbers, which might not be everybody's forte, but it's important. And tiny little changes, adding 5 minutes to a class, giving teachers 10 minutes to plan before or after the school day ends, it can add up to so much additional time, which is again such a valuable resource. There was a quick case study to touch on this one. It came from Bladensburg High School with Principal Jordan. There were three kind of actions that she took just to kind of give you some tangible steps what this might look like in actual application. So she added intervention blocks and collaboration time. My school does this. We have collaboration time every single day. The school I went to beforehand did not, and so I had to spend so much time powering through things solo, and that could have been cut down on so much if I had some collaboration time. And then two additional actions that Principal Jordan took before we move on. Reorganize student schedules to prevent retakes. So just looking at scheduling, looking for students, avoiding like common mistakes like retaking. And then the impact of this, sorry, not a third action, but the impact of this is that she had such a nice increase in proficiency. And so I believe it's, according to my notes, math proficiency and reading proficiency increased by 8 to 12 percentage points in 3 years. That is noticeable growth in a relatively short time frame. To move on to the third category, you've got the budget. The chapter did give us a fair look at this and just say that this is not the most exciting of all things, but again, this is the structure that helps support the school and how it functions daily. So budget might not be everybody's favorite, but again, very important. Kind of the two key ideas here. Money and like how it's spent it's a mirror of your priorities, right? If your school spends 90% of its additional budget on athletics, it shows that you prioritize athletics. And so what you're spending your money on as a school, that kind of shows your priorities. And then probably the main takeaway from this section was just that you don't always need more money. You need to consider how you are spending your money and how to spend it intentionally and purposefully and to prioritize correctly. Three actions that you can take. And when it comes to your budget and your resources, shift funds to where they matter the most. If you're spending X amount of dollars on this and it's not necessary and you are experiencing some budget shortfalls like my district currently is, put those funds where they matter the most. Next, align your partners to your goals. So aligning partners to your goals helps them kind of understand and agree with the budgetary constraints, where money's going. They can kind of get on board, cuts down on disagreements. And then lastly, we need to make sure that money is spent, probably if we want to have three priorities, we want to make sure that our school space is clean, safe, and functional, right? We want to make sure that it's just a place that students want to be. That's a good way to think about spending our money. In the interest of time, I'll move on to the fourth category real quick, which is going to be your relationships with your community and your district. Key takeaways here: a school doesn't operate in isolation, right? You have a relationship with so many students and their families and the community stakeholders and the districts and the other schools in your district and so on and so on. Key takeaway here is probably just that transparency and alignment are super important. Transparency helps to build trust, which is a great foundation for a good relationship. There were two quick case studies to reference for this one. So you had Principal Holland. He was having issues with like parent trust in this case study, and so he took a couple actions to rebuild that relationship. First, he practiced transparency by sharing crime stats and performance data. He created a council of family, and then he encouraged community partnerships. And we do this a lot through like my school's CPOC committee, which is our campus improvement plan. We invite stakeholders to be a part of those discussions and after school meetings. And then we're transparent about our goals and how we're progressing and things like that. And then the other case study example, really quickly to wrap us up, would be Principal Brown from the case study in the Bronx, where she said, no, her staff was experiencing kind of some stress over a new curriculum rollout, and she knew that that would be it would be a detriment to her student achievement and also to her staff morale. And so she's communicating with her district, transparency, making sure that like that vision is aligned and that they are in agreement on the idea that maybe the curriculum needs to be a little more slowly implemented so that the staff doesn't get overwhelmed. So just to wrap us up, planning and operations is absolutely essential. It's not like the most fun or exciting thing, but it is absolutely essential to making sure that your school functions and that student achievement can be achieved. That we have set lofty goals for it and that we're actually able to facilitate and achieve those goals.